Good afternoon and welcome to this session, which will be, I think, one of the most urgent conversations of our age, something we all should be caring about. And of course, the session is titled Human Mind versus Machine Mind, the Race for Superintelligence. The human brain is seen and as regarded as the crown jewel of our evolution. Our brain, they say, is an organ of 86 billion neurons that help us fuse our feelings, perception, memory, imagination, and morality into what they call a stream of consciousness that, for centuries, has shaped our culture and civilization. In doing so, we have become the dominant species of our planet. Yet, today our own machines are beginning to challenge human supremacy. Artificial intelligence, or AI, can already outpace us in language, science, and problem solving. So let's pose the big questions. Just how close are we to truly understanding the mind and replicating the brain functions? And will this race for superintelligence, or the moment, that big moment when machines outthink humans, will it redefine consciousness and the very meaning of being human in the 21st century? To help us untangle these complexities, I'm delighted to welcome Professor P. Murali Doraiswamy, one of the world's leading researchers at Duke University. Let's give him a very warm round of applause. His pioneering work bridges neuroscience, brain health, and human cognition. Over to you, Professor Doraiswamy.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think Raj very eloquently stated how important the brain is. I think the picture here shows you some of the greatest inventions, some of the greatest artistic creations that the human brain has produced. You know, we can contemplate the stars, we can compose ragas, we can invent things from the light bulb to the internet to the smartphone. But the fundamental question that is being posed today is this all a product of our genes, of biology, and all of our social interactions and environment? Or is this simply code? And can it be replicated by code? And that, I think, is the mirror that is in front of us that we are facing today. In fact, Thomas Edison, who is the founder of the Second Industrial Revolution, famously quoted, "The main purpose of the human body is to carry the brain around." In fact, today in the Fifth Industrial Revolution, we can rephrase it to say the main purpose of the human body may be to carry an AI around. So this, as the previous panel discussed, this graph charts the explosive rise of AI over the last 75 years. So AI really is 75 years old. There have been many waves, about 5-6 waves. This is the biggest wave yet because $1 trillion+ are being invested. By comparison, the human IQ has only risen by about 10 to 12 points over the last 100 years, and the prediction is that it will rise only about 4 points over the next 30 to 40 years. And some of the major benchmarks that AI has beaten, I think, started first with AlphaGo, as you can see here. AlphaGo was considered one of the most difficult board games, and the prediction at that time was it would take a computer 15 years to beat it, till a spin-off in London called DeepMind developed an AI program based on the brain called neural networks and deep learning. And they were able to not only beat AlphaGo, the #1 reigning champion of AlphaGo, but the subsequent iterations of AlphaGo did not even need to be told the rules of the game. It could learn the rules of the game by itself, and it beat the champion 100 times to 0, to the point where the champion just retired and said, "There is no hope for a professional player like me. I will never beat a machine again." So the next landmark occurred with the development of something called transformers. I won't get into the detail. And then DeepMind again produced an iteration of AlphaGo called AlphaFold, perhaps the greatest application of AI to human health ever. The human body has maybe 100 million proteins or more, which occur in three-dimensional shapes. And understanding how these proteins fold or misfold in diseases is very crucial to finding new treatments for the hundreds and hundreds of diseases that impact human suffering. It was predicted that humans in our lifetime would never be able to uncover the folding of these proteins, because a typical PhD student doing a PhD for 5 years would maybe uncover the structure of a single protein. AlphaFold, within a couple of years, came up with a program that was able to predict the 3D structure of proteins to the point where the newest iteration of AlphaFold has been used in 90 countries by hundreds of thousands of researchers to uncover the structures of 200 million proteins. And many, many drugs are already in late-stage development based on those structures. And now the newest iteration of AlphaFold is publicly available, and you can use it to predict the structures of not only proteins, but a variety of other cellular structures in the human body. The next major breakthrough was in language, which was GPT and ChatGPT. So with ChatGPT, for the first time, AI started feeling very, very human. ChatGPT can now compose poetry that brings us to tears. I recently was asked to write an article for Time magazine on AI, and my co-author first generated a version of the article using ChatGPT, and then I wrote an article, and we sent both to the editor. The editor actually preferred the one that was written by ChatGPT without their knowing it. So now it can write articles better than the best trained human. And then, so where are we headed next? With this massive investment, AI is going to be everywhere. AI is going to be in every machine, it's going to be in our body, and it possibly will eventually also be in our brains. The next big benchmark that everybody thinks we'll achieve within 3 years or so, according to Silicon Valley, is called artificial general intelligence. Artificial general intelligence is when a computer is good not just in a narrow field, like playing chess or playing a board game, or like answering some interesting question or drawing a cat face, but it will surpass humans across multiple abilities, and to the point where you will not even be able to tell whether it was done by a human or a computer, the so-called Turing test. The Turing test is when you cannot tell the difference between a computer and a human in its output. In fact, the prediction is that when we reach AGI, the computers will be so good, it'll be very easy to tell that it was done by a human, by a computer, because no human probably could have ever done it so well. And then the prediction is in the next 15 to 20 years, maybe by 2050, we will reach a state called artificial superintelligence, where AI will surpass humans in every single field, whether it be physics or biology or poetry or music or filmmaking or journal editing, to the point where it'll be able to instantly solve every unsolved problem in humanity. Now, of course, the biggest threat is that once we get to that point, we may not be able to control it. Rogue actors could weaponize it, or we would become slaves, or we would become so dependent on it that it would be called cognitive offloading. We would completely become dumb. So those are some of the biggest, those are still theoretical risks that we should guard against. Now, in my own field, I'm a doctor. Most of my time is spent with patients, but even I'm starting to think of AI almost every day. Not just front patient-facing, but behind the scenes, in terms of charting, in terms of drug discovery, in terms of better prediction of disease. And so these are some of the major milestones that have been achieved in medical AI. At least in the US now, there are at least 1,500 AI-based clinical decision support tools that have been approved by the FDA. And a number of tools are already cleared in India as well, and Apollo Hospitals is an example of one of the hospitals. You now have on its website something called Ask Apollo, which is an AI-powered chatbot, works in about a dozen languages. It can not only field your questions, its back clinical intelligence engine will automatically assign a differential diagnosis, will tell you which is the best consultant and what kind of tests are recommended for you. And this will continue to get better and better and better. So Microsoft just unveiled something last month, a multi-agent tool. So it's not just a narrow AI, it's an AI that works across multiple areas called Medical Orchestrator. So it's like a Zubin Mehta that coordinates a full orchestra. They gave it 320 of the most difficult medical diagnoses where a doctor only has a 20% accuracy rate. And this particular AI agent was able to diagnose those cases with an 80% accuracy rate, so 4 times better than the best consultants in the field. And this tool is expected to be rolled out pretty soon, at least initially across the US and then the rest of the world. There's another paper that just came out in a journal called Nature, where a group of researchers developed an AI algorithm that can predict your risk for 1,000 diseases. You can take a 25-year-old, give the person the history, the family history, a little bit of the person's background. It can predict that risk. It's unbelievable what is happening. Just imagine the power if you have this tool in your smartphone, what kinds of health behavior changes you can make to reduce your risk for future disease. Now, of course, AI can be super smart, but AI can also be super dumb. It can hallucinate, can make catastrophic errors, it can have biases, can of course disclose your information, give you stupid information, like the chat user with mental illness who was asked to commit suicide that many of you may have read about. So clearly there are many, many areas where the human brain is still far better than AI, but AI is catching up very soon. And this slide lists some of the areas, and certainly as AI begins to automate workflow and job losses occur, these are some of the skill sets that are going to be in demand. And ultimately, it's not going to be about AI replacing humans, but about the two, AI and human, working together, keeping human in the loop, something we call as intelligence augmentation. So coming to my area of work in my lab, I'm focusing on how can we enhance the longevity of the 8 billion computers inside our brains. And it's very interesting because the biggest threat to this cognitive revolution is neurological and psychiatric diseases. And the exact cost of these illnesses to society in the next few years is predicted to be $1 trillion, the same amount we're spending on AI. So one of the biggest threats to our brain health is a condition called dementia. There's something like 50 million cases of dementia worldwide, and about 150 to 200 million people are at risk. As this slide points out, there's a case of dementia that occurs every 3 seconds, and the 2 biggest causes of dementia are called vascular dementia and Alzheimer's dementia. So this is a brain, and many of you may be shocked to know this is the vasculature of the brain. This is a little bit of a graphic image. We have hundreds and hundreds of miles of blood vessels, including very, very tiny end arterioles that have no collaterals. So if there's a blockage in those blood vessels, there's a critical area of the brain that's damaged. 1 millimeter of the brain has something like 10,000 to 30,000 nerve cells and millions of connections. So it's crucial to keep your blood vessels patent and the blood flowing. So any kind of blockages from hypertension, high cholesterol level, lack of exercise, eating too much fatty food, it's obviously bad. And then silent strokes and blockages start building up in your brain at the age of 45 or so. You throw about 200 clots into the brain on an average day, a lot more if you have irregular heart rate. Now the Apple Watch, even the Apple earbuds now, can detect irregular heart rate, and that's something very crucial, a condition called atrial fibrillation that throws a lot of blood clots into the brain and is a leading cause of strokes. So you can see some of the white areas are called patchy white areas. These are silent strokes that you're having in the brain without your even knowing you're having it, but it just reduces your memory and your speed of processing by 5–10%. So this is Alzheimer's disease. The left side is a normal brain. The right side is an Alzheimer's brain. You can see there is shrinkage and loss of brain tissue. That's why it's called a neurodegenerative disease. Now, Alzheimer's disease starts something like 20 to 25 years before you start having memory problems. It's just like heart attack. It doesn't start the day that you go into the emergency room. Your lifestyle, junk building up in the arteries, that's what leads to a heart attack. The same thing with Alzheimer's. We now know that it's a gradual process that can start in your late 40s and 50s. So this picture depicts normal nerve cells. And you can see one of the abnormalities that builds up is called amyloid. It's a protein junk that builds up. It clogs your nerve cells. And it's a misfolded protein. Again, using AI, we can now decipher the structures of these kinds of proteins and develop exact targets and drugs. The second abnormality that builds up in the Alzheimer's brain is a protein called tau. And you can see tau is the green stuff that accumulates inside the nerve cells. It collapses the nerve cells, and it causes damage from the inside. So you have two forces, one, a plaque accumulating outside causing damage, and two, tangles inside the nerve cells causing damage. Now, sleep, it turns out, is very crucial. Now, what you're seeing here on the left side is an asleep brain, and on the right side is an awake brain. You may be wondering, did I mix the two slides up? No. It turns out that when you're asleep, there is a new system that comes alive in your brain that was only discovered about 10 years ago. And this system is called the glymphatic system. It's like the brain's recycling system. It takes out all the trash, it takes out all the toxic products that have accumulated in your brain, and it gets rid of them through your lymphatic system and your blood supply. So adequate sleep is crucial. If you have sleep apnea, which can now also be detected by a watch, by a variety of sensors, but 30–40% of people probably in this room have mild sleep apnea and they don't know it. If you have a slight paunch, there's a very high likelihood you have sleep apnea. So again, make sure that if you have sleep apnea, it's detected because you want to have a restful sleep to clear toxins out. So we now have amazing tools to map the changes that are happening in the brain. There's a tool called PET scans, which we were part of developing at Duke, called amyloid PET scan that can map the buildup of these plaques in the brain. We also have another tool called tau PET scans. So these are like an MRI scan, but it's like a scan that involves injecting a radioactive dye into the brain, and it can map that. We now also have blood tests. Just like in cancer, you have something called as a liquid biopsy. We now have simple blood tests that can measure how much plaque buildup there is in the brain. It can also measure how healthy your nerve cells are. So these tests are now going to be crucial for monitoring you during your annual physicals, especially if you have any risk factors such as high blood pressure, cholesterol, family history, etc. There are now a variety of drugs in development and vaccines. There are 2 drugs that are approved to clear these plaques in the brain. These are the first generation drugs, and there are newer drugs that are going to be coming out very soon. So the field looks very promising, and I think we can expect to have some very, very rich therapeutic inventory very soon. What about lifestyle? Dementia is about 40% lifestyle determined. It's about 60% genetic. So some of the lifestyle factors that you are listed in this slide. You can see sleep, as I mentioned. There's a U-shaped curve again. As you sleep optimally between 6 to 8 hours, you have peak cognitive performance. If you sleep too much, your cognitive performance goes down. Again, aerobic exercise, you can see, no exercise is bad. You can exercise 3 to 4 days. It's really good. If you exercise too much, especially if you're someone running marathons, ultra marathons, that's bad for the brain again. Alcohol, you can see the very steep curve. A couple of drinks is okay. Too much, it deteriorates, so watch out tonight. So with AI tools and using your risk factors, we can now compute a brain age for each individual person and compare it to your chronological age. And we can see the gap, and we can give you a brain number that hopefully motivates you to lead a better lifestyle. And there are a variety of multi-domain interventions we can use to actually bring your brain age back by 5 years or so. So that is the future of brain health. And one of my goals in my research is to democratize brain health. We don't want to just study white brains. We want to make brain research universal. And now with internet, we can do that. So we are creating a global neuro lab. And we already have 51 million people from 160 countries contributing voluntarily data through this portal. And so we are creating the world's largest living lab of brain health through which we hope to gather new insights to help the next generation and the present generation. So what's coming in the future? You know, Silicon Valley is thinking way upstream. Of course, the first we're going to start with non-invasive devices. Mark Zuckerberg is thinking about Meta, the glasses. So these are one way they provide, information from the outside world to the brain. The next generation of devices is called neuromodulation. Could be selectively, non-invasively stimulate different parts of the brain through lights, through very mild currents, which are not dangerous, that can stimulate specific regions of the brain and enhance our cognitive abilities. So the military will likely use this. Patients with diseases will likely use this, but eventually it may come or available to the general population. Ultimately, of course, what Elon Musk and some of the other pioneers are thinking about is a chip in the brain that does not damage the brain, that can read and write bidirectionally, can receive input, closed loop, sort of give the right signals back to the brain and enhance the brain when it's needed, or rest the brain when enhancement is not needed. And again, that's also in early clinical trials. There are many risks and many hurdles to be overcome, but that's where we're headed. So I think I want to stop with this, and really, when you think about it in the AI revolution, the brain is our most important asset. It's important for us to live by design. It's important also for us to design AI that enhances human capabilities and works well with human wisdom. So I just want to thank you.
Let's really give him a very, very warm round of applause for that. Brilliant presentation, and we just got a couple of minutes, and some ABC questions while we're putting up this, which is, I think everyone's asking this, right? And those who have teenagers or, maybe 20s, will AI replace human friends? I've seen that happening among the youngsters. Will that happen? And I will ask you the most, I think, provocative question in some senses is, will it replace human sexual relationships?
I think AI is already replacing human friendships because, for starters, youngsters spend a lot of time, there are many, many people who are lonely, especially elderly, and loneliness is a huge medical condition. Loneliness leads to depression, leads to emergency room visits, leads to all kinds of issues. And so we've been testing a companion robot. And we actually developed for the first time a rating scale called the Cobot scale, Companion Bot Impact Scale, which measures the impact of a companion robot on 9 dimensions of well-being, including happiness, including, depression, sleep, etc. So we have had some users that have had, 3,000 cups of coffee, and they just chat with this robot as though it's normal because they have nobody else to chat to. So it could be, a widow or a widower living alone at home, somewhere isolated. So for those kinds of people, I think it's amazing. Now, one of the things I'm concerned about is OpenAI has just announced an alliance with Mattel, the toy maker, to introduce large language models in toys for children. Wow. And so we don't know the impact that it's going to have on the developing brain, which is when attachments are formed. So that's the area that I'm a little bit uncertain about.
And sexual relationships?
Sexual relationships, I haven't studied that area, so I'm not an expert on it.
You're ducking this question. I won't let you go. You have to answer it. Go ahead. Try it.
I think it's coming. The sexual industry has always been at the forefront of the technology revolution, whether we like it or not. And I don't know the way it's going to progress, but there already are, obviously, virtual replicants. You can have virtual girlfriends. The most interesting quote I heard was from the CEO of Bumble, a dating agency. And she said, the future of dating is my AI will date your AI, and then we'll decide whether we actually go out for dinner.
Okay. Let's come to the other big question. How much of job loss would happen as a result of AI? I mean, that's one of the big concerns. And for instance, will it replace doctors? You talked a lot about how medical science has been progressing through AI. Would you lose your job?
So I think the answer to that is this well-known quote everyone has had. AI won't replace doctors, but doctors who use AI will replace doctors who don't use AI.
Ouch. Okay.
So it's just like anything else. If a doctor doesn't have an X-ray or a doctor doesn't have a stethoscope, you would rather go to the one who has the latest tools. And to be honest, the AI is far more sensitive. The AI is going to pick up a lot of subtle things a doctor may miss, so I would feel much more confident. So we've done studies showing if you take an average MRI scan and put it through an AI, the AI picks up far more lesions, subtle lesions, than a doctor's human eye can. So ultimately, it's going to be human plus AI, which will provide the best diagnosis and care plan.
Okay. Your job is safe or not?
I think my job is safe because, first of all, I'm also involved in the research. So it's like that old saying, right? If you're not on the table, then you're on the menu. So I'm at the table.
Great one. and just a little tip for us, right? What can we do to keep our brains in top shape so that we can compete with AI and be ahead of AI?
Well, I think it goes back to this first, my original quote. I think I also laid out a slide with all of the critical abilities, whether it be reasoning, whether it be leadership, whether it be empathy, soft skills. All of those are going to be critical in the new era. Of course, working with AI is going to be crucial. AI literacy, whether it be coding, whether it be learning how to protect biases, whether it be asking the right question of AI, or whether it be, building guardrails. So those kinds of skill sets are very important. But I firmly believe that the users should be the ones at the front line leading the AI revolution rather than the coders, because otherwise we're going to be the ones coded.
Okay, I'm going quickly because we've got very little time, but one of the things that defines human beings is feeling, right? And consciousness. Will AI become sentient? Will it become conscious?
So I don't have an answer to that. So I'll flip the question. When does a baby become conscious and how does a baby become conscious? I've been wondering this. We know sometime during pregnancy the baby becomes conscious. We still have disagreement of when and how. Is there a critical brain mass that's needed? Scientists think there's a projection going from the thalamus to the cortex that determines consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. Neuroscientists can't agree when someone is brain dead or whether someone is still alive. So I think it's possible a machine might become conscious, but if it does, it'll be accidental. I don't think we have the exact formula for creating consciousness yet.
And finally, there's 55 seconds left, which is a huge question to answer, but atrophy. All of AI is what happened to humans in the past. It picks up that, it's able to then act on that. But as we know, our lives are unpredictable, and you cannot really predict the future. So where does AI come into the picture then? Because it can build models of the past and tell you what's happened and all these lesions that you talked about, but life is uncertain. And that's the surprise of humans.
True, but just like humans can imagine the future, I think AI models can be built to imagine the future and predict the future. So, for example, AI models are predicting the trajectory of my life. I put myself through the AI. It has projected my medical history over the next 20 years. So AI is capable of predicting the future and projecting what happens in the future. Is that what you're asking, or did I miss?
In some senses, hallucinating, right? We use the word hallucinate for AI, but in a worse sense because there is no future that we can predict ourselves.
Yeah, no, the AI will make it up simply. So we have to make sure it's not making up stuff.
And so when does that point reach when you think AI will equal the human brain and actually cross it? And then when do we become master and slave?
So AI has already crossed the human brain in multiple areas. Like I said, AlphaFold, all these areas, right? So the question is, can it master the human brain with zero-shot learning? Like when a baby bumps into a table, it instantly learns, ouch, it's causing pain, and I need to avoid these kinds of objects, and it generalizes it to other objects called transfer learning. I don't think we're there yet. That zero-shot learning and transfer learning, once it hits that, then we need to be scared.
We have plenty of questions. Our time is up. Thank you very much, Murali Doraiswamy. Let's give him a very, very warm round of applause for this.